Thank you all for being here. I'd like to especially thank the City of Dallas for their partnership in today's event. Obviously, you can see here by staff turnout, they're very much invested in having a conversation, one that's open, frank, and honest. And so that's what we're here to do today. My name is Brian Toney. I'm the Good Neighbor Initiative Project Manager with 24 Hour Dallas. We're a nonprofit that started in 2020, and our mission is to make Dallas safer, more inclusive, and more vibrant at night. So we greatly appreciate you all coming to the first kickoff meeting for Dallas clubs, pubs, and bars. We'll talk more about next steps beyond today's meeting, but the goal is to build trust, to build more communication and a relationship between our City of Dallas departments, many of you who are in the field, and interact with our nighttime economy and the private sector, our business owners who add to that vibrancy, who bring in revenue for the city, and who attract patrons from all around the region to come and have a great time and be safe in Dallas. So we greatly appreciate y'all again being here. We hope that the mutual commitment and some of the conversations that we're going to have later on today will lead to that. And so you're aware, we are recording the presentations both for the video and audio for our business owners who couldn't be here today, as well as community members. KERA is here and writing an article, but nothing that is said during the second half of the meeting in our small groups will be attributed or can be attributed to anyone in this room without your consent or in a formal interview. So the main recording is only happening during the first half of our department presentations. And so that's all I have to say from our behalf on 24 Hour Dallas's side. Thank you to our business owners who made it out today. A lot of you heard about it in different ways, through word of mouth, through emails, through social media. We hope to continue to have more of these in the future and have an even greater participation moving forward. I look forward to it, and I'll turn it over to Assistant City Manager Simpson for some remarks from the city's end.
So thank you, Brian, and thanks to everybody who showed up today. The good news is, as he indicated, if you know some other business owners that couldn't make it today, they can always go online, hopefully, and click on it and be able to watch what we were talking about today. One of the big things I think I would like everybody to take away from this is the goal for us is to make sure that we ensure that we're pushing for a safe environment in Dallas. What we want to do, I think, is we want to have people come to the City of Dallas, feel comfortable, feel safe, and we also want to make sure that our businesses are safe and our businesses are successful. So I just want to lay that foundation. Brian's kind of already talked about that, but that really is what we want to do. And so with that in mind, as we talk to you today, if you have recommendations, suggestions in your breakout sessions about what we can do as a city to be more facilitative and to be more supportive of businesses, please don't hold back. Give us that information, because I'm hoping that we can develop a serious collaboration and partnership from here on out. All right. We've got a lot of city staff, and Brian asked me, well, why don't you introduce the city staff? We got so many people here, it's like, But what I think we'll do is we'll hold off on that, because what we'll do is when we break out into those sessions at the tables, you all have an opportunity to talk about and introduce yourselves at your individual tables, okay? Does anybody have any questions for me before we get started with our presentations? All right, and just so you know, the topics that we're talking about today aren't written in stone. If you have other interests related to your business and what you should or shouldn't do or what you can do, we're going to bring other topics to the table. So for example, I thought one of the big topics that we need to talk about are certificate of occupancies and what they're all about, and SUPs, right? If you want to change your SUP or CO, how do you go about that? And so we want to bring information so that you all have that, so you can be successful and we can, move toward a vibrant, successful nightlife. All right? Thank you.
So what we're going to have is each city department is going to come up and give a short overview, 5 bullet points of what they think are important things for our business owners to own and to know about. So first, just so we get an idea of who's all in the room, let's have our police officers raise their hand. Thank you, DPD, for being here. Thank you for your service. They're situated in each of these small groups, as are the rest of the departments. Police will go first. After police, we'll have Dallas Fire and Rescue. If you could please raise your hand if you're with Dallas Fire and Rescue. Good distribution there. Our Code Compliance Department. Awesome. Some of our late night warriors. Community Prosecution. The City Attorney's Office. Thank you for being here. Our Convention and Event Services Department, which you'll hear more about here shortly, and our commercial promoter ordinance, our transportation department. Awesome. Thank you, Gus, for being here as Director of Transportation. And then we'll have Philip Honore, representing the West End Association in 24 Hour Dallas, present about some business owner hot topics, things that we have found to be most helpful, and then we'll break into those small groups. So first, I'd like to introduce Major John Madison of the Dallas Police Department for the first departmental presentation from Dallas Police.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to reiterate, thank you very much for attending today. As he said, I'm the major over, or the division commander over Central Patrol and Central Business District. We incorporate most of the entertainment districts in Dallas, Uptown, West End, Deep Ellum, Downtown. The only ones we don't are Bishop Arts, Trinity Groves, and the Northwest Highway entertainment districts. So first and foremost, again, thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it. Together, we can make my job easier, and my ultimate goal is where no police officer ever shows up at your bars, clubs, and pubs for any type of incidents. I'm going to give 5 high-level overviews of things that we've seen that help locations in my area succeed in doing businesses and making their businesses a safer place. We also looked at the businesses that have the high number of calls, offenses, and to see what they didn't have and what they did. So these are the 5 things we've come up with, 5 high-level things. First is institute better door security, have a controlled entrance and exit point. Don't just allow people to jump the patio, come in, and so forth. Just have some kind of controlled entry point. Consider the use of driver's license scanners. This protects both you as the business owner, so you don't have underage consumption. Plus, those bad apples that come in, they're less likely to commit offenses in your location when they think that you already have their name and identifying information. The second bullet point is, of course, don't overserve. This is pretty much self-explanatory. This leads to most of our calls in our entertainment districts with intoxicated individuals. If they come in your business intoxicated, don't serve them. If they get intoxicated in your business, make sure you arrange for them to get home. Violations on that can be both civil and criminal with people leaving your establishment and get involved in accidents and so forth. Third thing, don't be afraid to call 911. We're here to help you. We're not going to hold it against you if you call 911 to report a business or a disturbance in your business. When we go out and handle those, we don't return and call up TABC and tell TABC there's violations. We only contact TABC when you do not call. And the next day we find out there's a violation, an assault, then we do reach out to TABC and report the businesses that never reported their crimes. So it doesn't look bad on you. Plus, it allows us to better track our resources to more appropriately deploy resources, officers, in other words, to locations. Fourth thing is if a disturbance does occur in your business, try to separate the parties involved, and if possible, have one party go out one location and the other party go out the back door or something a few minutes later. Some of the locations we've established that have the most disturbances, just take all the people and push them out the front door together. Well, all that does is they continue to fight outside your front door or out in the parking lot, and the offense still contributes back to your business. So try to send them out at different times. Send out one location and pull the party upside and talk to them for a minute and try to smooth it over and then send them out the back door. Not always can you do that, but it does help greatly when we come out there. Of course, that is if the disturbance is not still ongoing and you haven't called 911. And finally, provide monthly and quarterly training for your employees, including security. Now, we're going to go into later that type of training, but basically tell your employees how to conflict resolution, signs of intoxication, signs of fake IDs, and signs of current laws. And DPD is happy to partner with you on the training for your employees in that matter. So that rounds up our 5 bullet things that you can start out if you're not already doing those. So, any questions before I pass it over to fire? All right, Chief.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Martinez. I am the Deputy Chief over the Fire Prevention Division for Fire Rescue. Basically, the fire inspectors are going to be going out on the weekends. They work in the Division for Fire Prevention for Dallas Fire Rescue. The 5 points that are listed up here are, just like with police, these are some of the key things that we look for whenever we're going out to a location. Now, many times we might be going out just as a general check. Sometimes it may be because we may have received a complaint. But generally what we're looking for are these main key points here. Occupant loads. Occupant loads mean everything to a business when it's in an assembly. When you have a restaurant, when you have a bar, when you have a club, occupant load is essentially the ability to be able to have the patrons in there at a safe number. There's a basic equation that goes into this whenever the city does their plan review, but they make sure that you can have just so many occupants so that way they're able to evacuate safely. That occupant load is key because obviously that's one of the most visible things that people can see, whether they're passing by your club or whether they're actually inside of it or your bar or restaurant, is that occupant load. It's one of the things that we want to make sure is maintained throughout so that way people can evacuate safely. That's a key thing there, and we can definitely work with you if there's some questions about how the occupant load is calculated. We can make sure that you understand that. Fire alarm systems, fire suppression systems, fire extinguishers. These are your fire alarm system, of course. Obviously, that's going to make a lot of noise if anybody pulls a pull station or a smoke detector goes off. That's the key way for people to know they need to get out of the business in the event of an emergency. It is important that that is maintained and serviced annually. And you can look on the inside of that fire alarm system, sometimes on the inside door, on the outside door, it's going to have that tag, essentially, that's going to let you know when the last time wasn't serviced. If you ever have a tag that is yellow or red, those are key factors, key things are going to have to be fixed and repaired. So we're always willing to sit down and try to answer any questions about that. So just remember that that yellow or red tag is a key thing, that there's something that needs to be repaired. Same thing with the sprinkler system, if you have a sprinkler system. They're going to put tags on there annually, but that yellow tag and red tag is going to tell you that there's something wrong with the system. They will give you the details in the report. If you want to call us up and help us, we'll help you go through it and try to figure out exactly what means what as far as the deficiencies with the system. But it's important that those are serviced annually. And of course, fire extinguishers. That's one of the most basic elements that we have for any type of occupancy, not just assemblies, but fire extinguishers have to be serviced annually. Exit doors and pathways must be maintained free of obstructions. That's pretty straightforward. I think it's pretty easy to understand. We need to be able to see that pathway, whenever we walk in, especially if you have a pretty good crowd. We're going to be looking for those pathways to make sure that people can evacuate if they need to. We're going to look for those exit signs to be illuminated and make sure that the patrons in there are able to see how they need to get out in the event of an emergency. So from time to time, there may be obstructions that may pop up, and we're going to try to work with you as best we can to make sure those get freed. But also, those doors have to remain unlocked during the time that people are in there. During the time they have patrons in there, those doors must remain unlocked. No pyrotechnics can be used in the facilities. Now, when we say that, we see sometimes from time to time there may be some Class C fireworks that are sometimes used inside, and that's usually something like sparklers. Although it might not seem like it's too much of a danger, sparklers can present a significant hazard. We just got past July 4th, and it's one of the things we're always talking about is those sparklers can really present a danger. So it's something that we cannot have inside the occupancies is the pyrotechnics. And lastly, operations have to be consistent with their certificate of occupancy. Now, what I mean by that is if it's a restaurant, then those activities must be consistent with the restaurant. From time to time, we've had businesses where they may have been a restaurant, let's say Monday through Friday, 8 to closing, whenever, and there may be another type of activity that someone may wish to have there, like maybe parties, events, things like that. And sometimes it may fall outside of the use that's granted by the City of Dallas. So it's important to stay within that use. And again, if there's any questions whatsoever on what kind of uses are allowed, we're definitely ready to have those conversations to make sure that you stay within compliance. And those are basically the key points right there, unless anyone has any questions. All right. Oh, yes, sir.
How often do you do routine checks? Because my business has been trafficked by your business for the last 8 weekends in a row, Friday and Saturday, between the hours of 11 and 1 a.m. with fire marshal or with fire department and police officers coming through. That's quite disruptive to business, and it seems excessive.
Yes, sir. And sometimes what we're looking for there is we're just trying to make sure that the crowds are being maintained, make sure that the numbers are staying there that they should be, checking to make sure exit pathways, things like that.
8 weekends in a row.
Yes, sir. I can make sure we could try to take a look at exactly what the situation was and see if there was some type of a concern that we may have had there.
For over 8 years, I've been pretty good at doing it. It just seems, if you understand the flow of a business, of a restaurant or a bar, because what happens is you come through and do a full tour of the space, right? So we're now having to take managers away from their job for at least 30 minutes when you're arriving. And so we're having to walk through with you guys. And so it just becomes quite disruptive to the overall flow. And the presence of security, of cops and fire professionals in the business during that time frame doesn't make anyone feel comfortable. And so when that happens on a regular basis, what starts happening is people start to expect it, and now you start declining businesses. So it seems intrusive and excessive, and I'm trying to find out how I've operated over 15 concepts in this city since 2009. I currently operate 13 businesses in Dallas County. I'm a resident of Dallas County. Pay a good amount of taxes here, and I'm trying to find it. And the situation is, I can never approach you, your team, or my management can never approach you or your team with anything other than, yes, sir, how can we help, what's going on? Otherwise, we feel targeted when we already feel targeted.
Okay. Well, and I apologize that's the feeling that you had, and definitely the one thing we want to make sure is everything is as transparent as can be, because when we arrive there, we want you to know exactly what it is the concern may be, or what particular aspect we may be checking. So definitely during the breakout sessions, I want to be able to sit down with you and we can try to talk through those, because I want to make sure that we are not being disruptive to the business. That's the key thing. While we want to maintain safety, we know that you have a business that you have to run, and we want to make sure that we're only visiting when necessary, and there we're not overstepping in any way whatsoever. So thank you for the information. I want to be able to talk during the breakout sessions.
To what the fire department requires on a complaint or a citation, for how long after that they'll come in, is there defined guidelines that we operate under, defined guidelines, right? So is there defined guidelines for you on how you approach these complaints and how you go about your business, or is it pretty ambiguous to where you can show up unattributed anytime you feel like, just because there seems to be a complaint or something going on?
Generally, when we get a complaint of a life safety hazard, which is anywhere from exits being blocked, a fire alarm system that may not be functional, or a sprinkler system, that's something we're going to try to respond to as soon as possible.
Are those documented?
In our procedures, our basic procedures, yes, sir. And what we try to do is, depending on the particular hazard or number of hazards, we try to give some, the inspector will have some leeway as to how often we may need to come back to check on that. Obviously, if it's a significant hazard, we're going to try to make sure we get the problem solved right then and there. If it's something that you may need some time to be able to repair or to fix that hazard, we're going to try to have a follow-up. But generally, as soon as we can, to make sure that we're doing that, try to maintain the safety factor.
And so it's as simple as I can call on Taco Bell and say I was in there and there's a fire extinguisher that was out, or I couldn't see the exit sign, and I can call that every week, and you'll go see them every week.
If we feel like that there is a hazard there, we're going to visit as often as necessary to ensure that there's not the hazard.
So that's the type of dialoguing that is the case study and the point in what we're doing here today. In your small groups, I see Chief Freeman standing up, and I know he had a ton that he would have loved to say. So in their small groups here, we'll have a lot of that kind of dialoguing. So you all get to know each other on a personal level. So you'll have their information and calls whenever they do come and visit your business, and hopefully get more support in ways that you can help make it less disruptive moving forward. That said, we're going to continue to move through our departmental presentations to keep the flow going. You'll have more opportunities to ask questions, and that's the kind of dialogue that we encourage. I see some more business owners have come in through the back, so if you haven't yet tried to find your seat, feel free. We have a few more seats up here in the front left. Now coming up next is our code compliance department. So I believe Jose Ruiz is here to give their report.
Hello, everyone. Like I said, I'm Jose Ruiz. I'm a supervisor for code compliance, and I am currently assigned to the evening operations, so we actually go out and visit everyone at night. The bullet points that we have here are things that normally are the issues that we encounter more often that lead to other issues that are visits more regularly. So I kind of wanted to go kind of like the fire department left on their last bullet point, which is the appropriate certificate of occupancy, land use, and specific use permits. What we need you to do, and what you can help us with, is to ensure that when you're operating your business, that it's being operated as the land use is stated on the permit itself. I'll give another brief example. We went out this weekend to a restaurant location, and when we encountered the restaurant location, there is no tables, no chairs, no kitchen. Just people charging a cover, pretty much running a club. So so when we find something like that, of course, we're going to have to come visit on a regular basis to make sure you're complying. In addition to that, if you have a specific use permit that some businesses are required, is if that specific use permit expires and you don't renew it on time, then that sometimes necessitates the needs for us to ask you to discontinue all business operations until your SUP is reobtained or reapplied for. And if you have an SUP, you know that can be a very, very lengthy process, so we may have to come out there more often for those reasons. So if you help us out with those things, that'll make it a lot easier for us as well. One of the biggest other issues we have from the citizens is we get noise complaints that are called into the city of Dallas. So when we go out there, we just want to make sure that you're following Chapter 30. Chapter 30 does not have a decibel meeting requirement, which means is you, according to the code right now, under Chapter 30, if we can hear the music beyond your property line, you're in violation based on Chapter 30. However, knowing that you're out there being a vibrant business and you're trying to survive, if I'm standing on the sidewalk, I'm not addressing it. I have to stand at the property adjacent to it that is complaining or nearby. If I can hear it, if it's loud and I have somebody complaining, then we're going to address that issue for the noise. We have a lot of businesses that operate at a very high decibel readings inside, and we cannot hear anything from outside. So all we're asking is for everyone to follow those guidelines so we don't generate the complaints by nearby neighbors, right? The next thing is parking. A lot of the things that we find out most of the time is that when we go out there, is your parking now it's being used by valets who charge on your required parking. That is not allowed. That parking needs to be available for your customers at all times without a fee associated with that parking. In addition to that, we find out that sometimes the venue's doing very well, so they extend the venue outside by putting tents or chairs or just playing the music even louder so their customers outside can also enjoy the situation that's going on inside. And so now we have patrons hanging outside in the parking lot, and the parking, the required parking is not available. We also have encountered that the parking lot sometimes is used by vendors. We allow food trucks or just vendors to set up to service our customers, but again, they're taking up the required parking, or now it's an extension again of your venue, so we have to be mindful of that. And also that there's no parking on city sidewalks. That's a lot of the complaints that we receive is because businesses are parking on public sidewalks or on public right-of-way that is still a sidewalk, that's still considered a sidewalk. In addition to that, also the transportation regulation does enforce valets, but only valets that are parked using city roadways, not necessarily on private property. So sometimes the confusion is, why are you addressing the valet? It's because you're on private property, operating on private property. The next issue is illegal vendors and performers outside. So sometimes when we're out there is some businesses have decided to let a DJ or a performer, a musician, someone set up in the parking lot or on the sidewalk with amplification devices to operate in lieu of what's going on inside, right? It's kind of to complement what you have going on inside. That's not allowed with amplification devices or to vent on city property. And we encounter that on a regular basis as well. Sometimes if you want to do that, you may have to inquire about a special event permit. If it meets that criteria, then we can do that through a special event permit, but you'd have to follow the guidelines of the special event permit. And also businesses, you cannot give anyone permission just to set up on your city property, on the city property, whether it's the sidewalk or the street, for the purposes of vending or doing any other activity, right? I mean, you give them permission to do it inside your business, but when it comes to city property, you're not allowed to do that. If they're gonna vend, you have to send them over to our consumer health department if they're selling food to try to get a permit from the city to see if it's allowed or not, or just reach out to code compliance with questions or concerns. When we're out there also, if you want to know why we sometimes come into your visit, because many times we've gone into some establishments, and if you know you're in there, most of the time the lights are turned down, right? People cannot see very well unless you're on the stage dancing with strobe lights. So sometimes when we walk the exterior, what I mean by the exterior along the walls, is there's many times where we've done that, and there's mirrors, but the mirrors have now been broken, right? And so someone is sitting there and they can lean back and the mirror is sticking out so somebody can injure themselves. So we look for that on code life safety issues. Also encounter where the sewer's backing up. Also when the, behind your bar areas, the connection is not correctly connected to the sewer line. So when you're turning your water on, it's actually going into the carpet itself or onto the floor itself, causing hazards. So we look for stuff like that. That's usually what we see when we're out there. And most importantly, what I want you to leave here today with is we're actually here to help. You know, we like it when we go to a business and we don't find code violations or code issues. It makes it easier on us. Less paperwork, less work that we have to do, right? And the other thing is we are here to help because if you're in the right and we have citizens complaining, we will defend the business owners. We will defend the business with the residents. Sometimes you will not know that because it's conversations we're having behind the scenes, but if you're up to code and you're following the guidelines, we will defend you with those that are calling in the complaints. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, forgive me for not mentioning this earlier. If anyone needs Spanish translation services, we also will have our presentation slides in Spanish posted later, and we have a translator in the back of the room who can help you. Next up, Jill Hanning with Code Compliance, Community Prosecution.
Hi everyone, Jill Hanning with Community Prosecution. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, we're a section of the City Attorney's Office that partners with Code Compliance, Dallas Fire Rescue, and DPD, and other departments of the city, but largely we're responsible for escalated enforcement, meaning if there's ongoing criminal activity at a specific property, we'll partner with DPD to raise the issue with the property owner and ultimately hold the property owner responsible in court should the proper steps not be taken. Same with code compliance or DFR. If violations continue to occur, the property will be referred to community prosecution. Just to give you some background. So our 5 bullet points are first, contrary to what many business owners or property owners say to us when we first encounter them, is that we're not trying to shut down businesses. Again, we're responsible for ensuring that business owners and property owners are complying with the city code and state law. And so we want all of these businesses to be successful. And at the end of the day, some of those businesses, you know, they don't comply with the law and they do end up closing. That's not our ultimate goal. The second bullet is get to know your neighbors. I think a lot of times the complaints we see are really from a lack of communication, that the business owner is unaware of the complaints that are of the residents that surround the business. And so, you know, we would really encourage that, you know, as a business starts to get complaints, that they spend some time getting to know their neighbors, whether that's other business owners or other residents, and develop a communication plan. Be transparent about who's responsible for the business at a specific time, so that instead of having to reach out to the city, they can reach out to you directly. That's our hope, is that y'all are really getting to understand each other so that we don't necessarily have to be involved. Know the law. I think everyone understands that the old saying, like, ignorance of the law is no defense. Ignorance of the law is no defense. I mean, the city departments are really gonna, as they've mentioned today, are gonna spend a lot of time trying to educate you. But at the end of the day, you need to be a responsible business owner and know what's going on. And that kind of goes into the 4th bullet, know and implement best practices for the industry. The cost to the city for continued inspections, being responsible for identifying the violations in your business, developing reasonable measures to address those violations, and then monitoring to ensure that those violations are addressed is significant. And so if your business requires that kind of response, there's a cost to the city. And you will ultimately be responsible for that cost. And that goes into the last bullet. Consistent violations will result in escalated enforcement. From the city's perspective, you know, the escalated enforcement kind of looks like this: education, notice, a new ordinance, which we can talk in small group about, the habitual criminal property or habitual nuisance property ordinance, and ultimately the city can sue the property owner or the business owner. Again, we would love not to be at the last bullet or even the second to last, but we are prepared to do that. So please take the departments up on the offer to educate you on what the law is, but I would encourage you to educate us on what best practices are. We don't want to be in the position of suing the property owner or the business owner. We're kind of all lost at that point. Thank you. No, Cincy. Yes, Cincy.
Will you explain habitual nuisance property?
You want me to do it now? Okay. The habitual nuisance property and the habitual criminal property is an ordinance that was passed by City Council in 2017 and then amended at the end of 2020. Habitual criminal property is if there's 5 essentially specific types of offenses. It's violent offenses, drug, gambling, prostitution, those types of offenses, then your property will be presumed to be an habitual criminal property. If the property has 3 code citations or 3 DFR citations for noise, overcrowding, valet parking provisions, or violations of SUP conditions, then you'll be presumed to be a habitual nuisance property. If you reach those presumptions, you'll get a notification from the city. You'll be asked to come to a meeting and prove that you do have the reasonable measures in place to rebut the presumption. If you do that, you rebut the presumption, the designation goes away. If you don't, really, like I said before, it means that you require additional education, additional monitoring that most businesses don't otherwise need, and there's a cost associated with it. A fee, you have to place a placard on your property, which most people do not like, that says you're a habitual nuisance or habitual criminal property. And but then the city, our section, will work with you on a very close basis to ensure that the violations are addressed and the criminal activity is addressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Jill. And these are all things that we hope through proactive communication from the city's end, through other touch points with city agencies, that our businesses don't ever hopefully reach the desk of Jill and the Department of Community Prosecution.
So I'm sitting here listening to the city talk about the remedies, right? What the things are that can happen, and Jill does a very good job in her shop. But I just want to reiterate to you that a lot of times you'll go a long way before you get to that point, right? So what I would like to see is when we start having noise issues or other types of activity going on, what I would like to see is that you take the advantage of meeting with city staff and saying, hey, look, you guys have come out here twice now and you're saying that we're too loud because I have a rooftop business, right? What do you need me to do? And that's where I'd like us to begin the conversation. And I'll just share with you, my previous employer, the city of Sacramento, had an entertainment team, which is where I think we're going to go in Dallas. And that's what they did. They went out and met with business owners and tried to resolve the problem way before it got to the point where you're getting a citation and so forth. And I'll give you an example of the rooftop noise. One particular business was having a complaint about rooftop activity and music. And so what we did is we just went and said, hey, look, have you heard about these new noise-resistant curtains that you can put up that are on the side of where the townhomes were or apartments were? They did that. It resolved the issue, right? So I want y'all to know that as much as we are the enforcement and regulatory arm, we really want to be the problem-solving arm first before we even get to that conversation. I just wanted to interject that because it was kind of sounding maybe a little bit negative for a minute there. Not you, Jill. Not you. Anyway, we have Rosa Fleming here now with Convention, and she's going to tell us about the Promoter Ordinance.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As you said, I'm Rosa Fleming. I'm the Director for Convention and Event Services. You work a lot with the Office of Special Events. That office sits within our portfolio. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today about the new Promoters Ordinance that was just passed. currently, it's governed by, Chapter 38A. A lot of you have dealt with us in the past with 42A, which is the Special Events Ordinance. And so this Promoter's Ordinance is really a registration. So you go in, you register your venue, and you provide us a general safety plan. All of you already have it. If you have a CO or you have an SUP, you already have a general safety plan. It tells you what your occupancy load can be. It tells you kind of what you can do in terms of escaping in a fire or if there's some kind of incident at your location. And so all we're simply asking is that you go to our website. It's listed here. It's you can email us at cctspecialevents@dallascityhall.com if you have questions, but you can go to dallasspecialevents.com. There is a registration site there. It's under a software called eProval. You'll go there, you'll register your business, you'll upload your safety plan. And in both instances, for both ordinances, both 42A and the new Promoters Ordinance, we're a one-stop shop. So everyone that's in here today, all of the city departments that are represented here, we work with them. So we'll take your information, we'll run it through code, we'll run it through DPD, we'll run it through DFR. We'll make sure that your safety plans are appropriate. If there is an event that you have booked in your venue and you have a promoter, a planner, et cetera, producer who's coming in and their event might deviate a little bit from that general safety plan that you're going to upload, that planner, producer, promoter will have to then upload that augmented plan. So if they're going to have something that requires a little bit more public safety intervention, a few more officers or some private security, a little more intervention from fire, a little more intervention from code, you'll then have to have them load up into that same site an augmented plan. So it's by no means an effort to impact your business in any kind of negative way. It's just an additional safety measure. And I think as Carl said, as Jose said, as Jill said, we're not here to impact your business. And I think any of you that have interacted with our staff know that we're here to be helpful. I'm always available. Jackie Justice, who you've all probably worked with, is always available, as well as our Office of Special Events staff. So with that, I think that's really all that I have to offer. If you have questions, happy to answer them when we do our roundtable. And again, always available to be of assistance if needed.
Thank you, Rosa. Next up, the Department of Transportation, led by Director Gus Concarly.
Thank you. I'll start with the last bullet, which is the coordination. I mean, a lot of stuff that we do is in concert with what DPD does or DFR does and code compliance and so on. So it is very important that we all have the communication going with all the departments and with the business owners so that we can make sure that we have a safe way to get people in and a safe way to get people out to where they came from. So this is very important, and I don't want to elaborate or restate what has been previously stated by the other department, but it is very important that this item is being considered. As a result, I mean, some of the things that we deal with, especially when it comes to the entertainment and at night, is the parking issue that is on-street parking, which is different than what code deals with, but the spillover of the parking on some locations where there is no parking allowed, and what is happening in a lot of locations where we've got parking happening on both sides, especially in narrow streets, that will prevent DFR equipment from getting in, or even DPD response vehicles to get in and out in case there is an emergency. So this is a key item that we really need to have the conversation and continue to work with each other on this item. The other thing is street lights. We need to make sure that street lights are operational. While the majority of the street lights in the city of Dallas are owned by Encore, We own a few of them in the city. So it's very important from a safety perspective is to ensure that the street lights in the vicinity of the businesses that are on the public right-of-way are operational. And if not, then, like I said, Encore has a service request website where information can be entered and followed up. The traffic signals, some of the traffic signals, especially in the entertainment district, for example, in Deep Ellum, sometimes it's either they, at night, either they're being manned by DPD or they are put on signal flash. So we need to make sure that whomever is going into those areas, I mean, they know and understand the operation and these signals, especially at night when some folks who are leaving at night. So we need to make sure that they're aware of these provisions. Pavement markings, crosswalks, and so on. We've had some challenges, and we're trying to catch up with the marking of these pavement markings. So again, a conversation would like to have if you have a crosswalk that is not properly marked or needs to be refreshed, then we need to have those conversations. And there is a way to kind of let us know through the service request in the 311 system, where you can put in the request, and then we'll address that. Also, one thing that we need to kind of keep in mind that two items that kind of overlap on all these things here, as well as what's coming up, is the return of the micromobility or the scooters. We're pretty much at this point, the way it stands, it looks like it's going to be sometimes here in the next few months. So if you've got patrons that will be using the scooters, we need to kind of, obviously we're going to be working with the operators on the handling of that, but it'll be good also where to have a conversation about it for that. And then the TNCs, or transportation network companies, the Ubers and Lyfts. We are working on a policy for it's called curb lane management policy, and that would help us try to have a structured approach to the location for the pickup and drop off, because that will help us also and help other departments, including DPD and DFR, in making sure that we know where people are and where they're being dropped off and picked up. So that's all what I have.
Thank you, Gus. And now we're going to move on to our business owner hot topics before transitioning to the small group facilitation. So again, if you're a business owner, thank you for being here. We really need your voice in this conversation, so we hope that we're all able to make it through the 4 o'clock time period and end on time. So, all right, Philip Bonneray with West End Association. He's also a 24-hour Dallas board member.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Can I get a show of hands of how many business owners or anyone affiliated with businesses are here today, whether you're a public safety manager or someone that operates a business? Thank you guys so much for being here. I recognize so many familiar faces. I'm going to get straight to the point, because we really need time to, with all the information we've got today, for our businesses to have opportunity to talk to city staff about their concerns. What I do know is I've been here for the last 4 years. I've been involved in public safety, been involved with public improvement districts and neighborhoods and businesses. And the overwhelming hot topics when it comes to city services and code compliance and fire department inspections is some of the frustrations this young man over here expressed earlier, and which I hope we'll be able to talk more about in our breakout sessions, and we'll have some solutions on some of the frustrations that some of the businesses have. But part of today and part of the things that we're trying to do here is really to educate the city staff, the businesses, employees, and our guests, right? It's not just a one-way, for the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it's been a one-way conversation with city staff telling us, hey, look, these are the things, the expectations. But we need the businesses really to participate, and I'm so glad you guys are here today and encourage your your peers to also come and other business owners to also come to some of these events so we can educate ourselves to make the community better, also to just ensure that the partnership that we do have between the city and the businesses runs smoothly. Part of that is communicating and making sure everyone's on the same page. And it's really, really encouraging that everyone that's been involved in some of these meetings that we've had over the last several weeks to get to this meeting, I think everyone's on the same page. And so now we need the businesses to kind of come and say, look, this is A, B, C, and D. This is 1, 2, 3. These are the things that are frustrating us. These are things that we're trying to do to become better business operators. But why not? Why aren't we addressing some of the bad actors? And so those kind of conversations need to happen, and we need to communicate with that. The relationships that we need to have are reciprocal. How can we help each other? The businesses, the clubs, the bars, and the restaurants, and the neighborhood leaders as well. How can we reciprocate the relationships between the city, city staff, code compliance, police department, all those things? So it's not a one-way conversation. It's not always about compliance. But what can we do to make things better in our neighborhood and our businesses? We have to engage with one another in reference to permitting. I know earlier the city manager said something about permitting, the permitting process, and our COs. Accountability is a big thing on both ends, right? On both the businesses and the city staff. And what can we do public safety wise? How can we make our businesses safe? Everyone's here for that. And that's important. If we aren't a safe environment, no one wants to come to our businesses. No one's going to want to come to our city. And I know everyone in this room, business owners alike, have worked real hard to make their spaces safe. And so really it's all about communication and our expectations of one another. Obviously, we have laws and procedures and policies and codes that we need to, comply with, but at the same time, our relationship as business owners and neighborhood leaders, we need to participate with that and show what kind of interest that we have with whatever they're doing to make things better. Really, overall, what I'm really trying to say, and I'm really trying to wrap this up because we need time to really talk as groups, is that without the reciprocal communication and without our collaboration with one another, our businesses, with our city leaders and with code compliance, the police department and fire department, we're not going to really make it. And so we're really at a crucial point and a crucial time in the city and our time coming out of the pandemic. So we can have more business, more of our venues operating in a successful way, and doing all the things we need to do to make our city better. Thank you.